Hi, welcome to today's video. We're going to look at something a little bit simpler than we've been dealing with in the past. Here's a nice break because it doesn't take me as long to set up the workflows and videos with something that's a bit more direct. There's an old adage that anything is simple if you know what you're doing, and I don't always believe that when it comes to Alteryx because even if you know what you're doing, sometimes your workflows are a bit complex. However, something that looks unsolvable can be more easily solved if you have a few more tricks in your toolkit. So the adage I sort of talk about with Alteryx is don't be afraid to experiment, try out some of those different options to see what it is that might do the job for you more directly, more easily, and with less problems. Because that's typically what I do when I'm looking at something that's not working quite the way I want it to, and I'll delve into some additional widgets or options within widgets. And so there we come up with the tricks that we try to share across the industry, because I truly believe that the Alteryx developers have thought about a lot of things when they built the application interface and the widgets, and they really have, many degrees, made things easy if you sort of look behind the scenes and more in depth of what's going on. So, simple problem coming through is that one of the business analysts was extracting the training data out of the Daisy Hill Puppy Farm data mart, and they needed to share this data externally, and they were getting different requests, and to a degree the underlying piece of the request, because their request wasn't quite as simple as this, was just simply to break this data down by breed so that they could send this out to different training organizations or whoever it is that they need to share this data with. And so they didn't want to go ahead and write a new workflow every time that they needed to create one of these extracts, and they knew that applications could help, but they couldn't quite see how they could get the application to do what they wanted it to do, and they were a bit frustrated. And I was more than happy to share a simple solution because I had been through this as many times, and I built it and showed it to them. And so they had a second problem, and that is the fact that within the fact table you have the breed WID, and you don't actually have the breed name. And they're trying to figure out how to make this much more simple to choose from breed name and get it into this workflow. And that turns out to be actually quite easy when we begin to deal with the interactive widgets. So let's go ahead and bring this over here. Again, it's always good to start out when you're building an application to actually have something that works to a degree. And so the first trick or tip comes in when we're dealing with the filter. Filter can do a lot of things for you outside of the default. So for example, if I want to do it by breed WID and actually choose that off of here, you notice I have some drop downs. This doesn't really help us for what we're trying to do because we want a list of things. Well, as with some research and trying things out, we can go into the custom filter right here and actually know that there is an in clause associated with filters. And just for default, we're going to do where the breed win is in 0. We're actually setting this up to work with our interactive applications actions. But for now, let's just go ahead and know that in and 0, and you'll see how this all fits together because it comes from the trial and error and how to customize it out. And then obviously a few other things that we want to do as well is we want to go ahead and sort this data. They would like to see it by the puppy WID, training date, and training time. That sort of makes it unique. And just for simplicity in the development of this for the video, we're going to go ahead and drop a browse on the end of it rather than putting this into a file, but all this works for putting into a file as well. So if we run this, it goes ahead and pulls all of the unknown breeds down out of the training and puts them into our browse. Pretty simple, But again, one of the tricks is that we're setting this up by doing the in, because we really want to have a list of IDs for the breed that we want to pass into this out of our actions. So we set it up simply here. So what do we need to do? Well, going into the interface, you have the list box, and we want to get a list of choices in this list box that the user can choose from. And we'll give them a nice English, select breeds for extract. And now it comes into, again, the second trick, which is how to get those values in here. And it turns out that having this in a database does indeed make this a bit easier, because we have down here a list of values. Most of these deal with the source, and it actually, most of them pulls column names out of this and not values, which makes it a bit tougher to use. But you notice that if we go to an external source, it contains a name and value fields. So we can give it the name, which solves two problems. It gives us a dynamic list of the names, and it also gives us the associated ID with those so that they can be passed into the filter. So when you have a name and value pair, the name appears in the list box and the value is what comes out of it. We also want to know that we want to go ahead and generate a custom list from this. And all that we want to do, since these are numbers, is make this a comma separated list of numbers. So we will go ahead and do it this way. It also helps to have tested the query. So what I had done originally is gone into my MySQL workbench, and I have a query right here which selects breed name where it's greater than or equal to 1, because I don't want the unknowns or the empty values associated with it, just simply the names. That was as per the user's request. So if you can see, I execute that and it shows you this list. So we can go ahead, and once we know that works, we can copy it out of there. And what we're going to do is come into here and go into here and say external source, and it wants properties. Now it brings you up the normal input data definition screen. So it's MySQL database. Let's go to the SQL editor by default. This tends to like to set itself off of that, which I just really find a bit disturbing. But we move it back to default SQL editor. We put in our query. We test our query here. It works. We click OK. So now in this list box, we will get a list of names and values. We can run this very quickly. It won't do anything at this point in time, but you can see interestingly enough, we didn't see. Oh, that's why what we want to do is, there it is. Not sure what happened with that first running of this, but that's okay. Here's our list of the breeds. And so we can go ahead and choose a couple of these and we'll pass them forward. Since what we wanted to do was go ahead and make this a comma separated list, it's nice to be able to test this and see how it works. And so what I do typically when I run these before I turn them over to a business analyst to use is I go ahead and create a text input. Create a test field, give it a value, and drop a browse on the end of that. So actually running this, you'll see I can now go ahead and use an action to replace that value with the actual data coming out of here so I can see how it's working. So we go back to our interface, go into our actions. We do not want it connected there. We'll connect it here. We'll connect it there. We want to update value, text input, data. I do not believe that update fields, it's not, update fields is not an option. We replace a value here. So now when we will run this as an app, it'll give us this output as well. But we have to do a few other things, and that is in the interface designer. We want to configure this. I want to show both of these browsers just so we can see the data coming out of it. I like to use my own graphic here. So now when we run this as an application, I might not have shown you this on the other screen. Here it is. You might have said, what was he doing before? He's talking about this. Well, you couldn't see it. Now you can. I dragged it over. So if we choose Bulldog, Dachshund, and Poodle, for example, we click Finish. This is the unfiltered data because we have not yet connected it up, but we notice here's the browse of 10, which shows you that our test field has in it a string that is 3, 5, and 8, which are the IDs associated with those breeds. So all we have to do is get that into our filter, and we will be good to go. So we can exit this. We'll go ahead and add another action down here. Connect it into our filter. What we want to do, we don't have quite as many options here, but you notice right here is the expression, and so we can replace a specific string. And we will down here, if you can look, we will replace the 0 with that string coming in, so it'll actually change the inside of the in filter. And now we can run this. For sake of this test, let's just choose our beagles, which are number 1. Spread this out, and you can see that our only breed is 1. And the string coming out of the list box is just the number 1. We can run this again, choose a few more to see how it works. You can see that now in this results window we have more breeds. We can verify how that worked by coming into here. So it's really nice that we had that there to see what's going on. If I turn this over to the user, I would go ahead and delete that piece of the application. For my own purposes, I like seeing it. So this workflow does exactly what they want it to do. It allows them to choose the breeds, queries the puppy training fact, filters it by the breeds that were chosen, and then puts the data into the stream so they can do any further downstream processing that need to do. There's one other thing I want to show you because you might get frustrated by this as well. And we've talked before about how Alteryx likes to cache the data that's coming into this interface as well as some of the other interfaces. Well, it turns out that a nice feature of pulling this directly out of the database is that it does not deal with a cache. And we can highlight how that works very simply by going back into our MySQL screen. Don't know why I actually closed that rather than just minimize it, but that's okay. Over here, I can insert this number 99 being ZZ Top. So now there's a new record in that table. Drag this out of the way. We run this application again. You notice that it does not use a cache because it is being directly fed by the database without any intermediary steps. So therefore, we have this information updated instantaneously, and it takes care of that caching problem. So something to consider for your applications is housing the data in the database so you can directly feed it as opposed to preparing it, and it takes out the need for having to have a multi-step or chained set of applications. So anyway, that's a couple of tricks to make your building of applications and to make your life easier if you're doing repetitive tasks or you need to turn something over to a analyst that doesn't have the real ability to continue to modify them. It allows your application to do it for them. So I hope these tips help you with what you're doing. It also walked us fairly slowly through building an application, and you feel much more comfortable building your own applications. As always, please subscribe to my channel. Let me know you're out there and you're enjoying these. Drop in comments that you have for what you would like to see in future examples, what your problems might be, any questions you have about this or other of my videos and workflows. Y'all have a great day.